Very cool. Okay. Hi, hi. So I'm going to be just kind of doing a bit of a bonus session, going through how I might kind of take the same design that you might have seen when we use a slightly different design and kind of walk through a little bit about how to design some of the glyphs. So just trying to make sure I share the right screen. Okay. Going to be sharing this screen. So if you are joining, thank you so much for coming on board. Cool. So here you are. Some of you might be really familiar with glyphs. You've seen this before. So here we've got all of our letters, uppercase and lowercase, and you can see all I've done here is just drawn a bunch of control letters, right? So capital H, capital O, small n, small o, and we're going to space these right now. So these are not spaced, and we're going to use the letter space versus counter space sort of principle. So here I'm just going to measure this up. There's 71 units inside the counter space, right? And a ton of units outside. So 70 units divided by 2, that would be 35. So I can go ahead and make that the same. Oops, what is this? Right? So I get a much tighter sort of copy fit for the N. And I think that I'm going to make it even slightly more condensed, and I'm going to make it about 30. So here, this is slightly less, it's 60 units. Inside is 71 units. And so it's a little bit narrower, but I think what it does is it helps me to create a bit more of a compact feeling. And this typeface is also generally a little bit more compact too. So if you don't like that, you can still add a couple of units. And we're going to do the same with the O. So if you have questions, type them in. I'd love to hear what you have going on. So here you can see we've got our O, and I'm going to start by putting it exactly the same value as the N, just to kind of try to see if I can shortcut the process a little bit. It's good, but we're not taking into account, obviously, the little tops, these little curved sections that an O generally has. So I'm going to put in slightly less units. And the important thing about spacing these control characters is that you want them to ideally be, especially for an O and a capital H, you want them to be equal, left and right. You also want to get to a stage where you don't need to kern your control letters, right? So your N and your O should never really be kerned. Your H and your O should also never really be kerned, because then your spacing just isn't really getting off to the right footing. And that's just going to give you a lot of problems later on. So I think I'm quite good with this. If it's big, if it's small, we're going to cut a bunch of space a bunch of pages. So 117, and in between, you can see we've got some space. So 117 divided by 2 is, oops, divide by 2 is 58. So I'm just going to put in 58. That does give me quite a generous capital spacing, but I think this typeface kind of needs a little bit more narrow ones. So I'm going to try a 50. Not too bad. H and H. Could be tighter, you reckon? So here I'm just going to try and be really ambitious. And I think sometimes the goal with this is that you want to sometimes push it to the extreme, right? So you want to put in a number that feels like, wow, that is really quite narrow, and then work your way back up to a more generous spacing rather than kind of slowly decreasing bit by bit, because that doesn't always sort of help you. Here is 40. I'm going to go with 10 units less and see how that gets me going. So it's not too bad. I think I will stay with this for now. And we can start to build out the character set. Okay. So what I'm doing here is you can see that actually in the background, I've got a bit of a sketch. And this sketch is something I'll upload to the Type Design Asia School. It's just a bunch of a cap, a couple of lowercase letters, and descender and an ascender. So that's really helpful. They kind of help us make a bunch of control characters. So if you've watched my video on Friday, you know that HIELFT, all really, really easy to make with just a H. So we're just going to do that right now. And I'm going to, for the purposes of kind of working fast, going to really kind of show how one can get going here. So H, go decompose, throw this all the way. So for narrower letters like L, I prefer to really have quite minimal sort of spacing. You don't need heaps and heaps of spacing. So there we go. Because this is kind of like a narrow design, it really helps us to second corner. There you go. So I do have a bit of a narrower E here, so I'm going to make it slightly wider. It is quite strange that this is so sort of so much taller. This is 168. These arms are only 158. I'm gonna kind of have to review that sort of later on as well. I'm going to put this as a random quick number by 10 here. Delete. And so I should put Keycaster on. That'll be helpful. Then everybody can kind of see what I'm doing as well. So here I've used the knife tool to just kind of slice my way through. It just helps me to kind of extend that a little bit. And the crossbar of an F isn't always the same as the crossbar of an E, right? So sometimes we do try to bring it a little bit lower. And the reason for that is because you've got a heap of space underneath here that you will struggle to kind of do stuff with. So, when we're spacing it, we space it pretty tightly on the right and on the left. Sorry, on the left, we space it pretty tightly. And then to help us as well, we try to move the crossbar down a little bit. So here I'm going to take this particular crossbar from the E. I'm going to flip this all the way up and centralize them. So this is where the alignment tools are really, really, really useful. And for this, I'm going to go with a very minimal value left and right. And ideally on a T, you want these two values to be the same. So the graphic designer in me, the OCD person, is a little bit annoyed that these are not matching up. So I'm going to just make that align, and that's kind of useful, especially for a typeface, which I guess is going to be used large. So here, I'm just going to put this down. So here, I've pretty quickly created a whole bunch of sort of uppercase letters, and then we can kind of go and look at the lowercase letters as well, like here. So C and G, it's going to be referencing the O. Very quickly, you can draw a square or a rectangle. Centralize this guy, make it bigger, cut him off. Right. And if I'm not wrong, we'll try and see if we can get this right this time round. Nope. Nope. No. Okay, well, none of those really worked. So unfortunately, there is no kind of secret sauce for this. But we can connect these two nodes here. And on this kind of gives a very open feeling, but I think something that's useful in a very tall, elongated sort of design like so is for you to kind of bring a little bit of the flavor that's happening on this. So you want a bit of a straight edge right here. So what I'm going to do is holding down Option and Shift. I am basically adding a node right here. So it's kind of like an additional node. And I'm going to drag it like so. Okay, the amount here is 20. This is 23. Oops. Okay, let's just 1, 2, 3. All right. So when I cross this, just select these two nodes, it gives me a distance, and that's really, really useful for just making sure top and bottom is the same. So what I want to do is to make sure that these turn into tangent sort of nodes, and from here to here is 168. From here to here is 171. Now that's only 3 units difference, but it does seem like it could benefit from a little bit more of a narrowing, right? You can see here, oops, if I undo, you get quite a wide kind of feeling. Almost feels as if these two terminals are heavier even than the stem on the left. And if I bring them in like so, ooh, there's a bit of a hang. Let me close some programs here. Haha, Spotify, bye-bye. Just to free up some space. You can see that you get quite a bit more of like a kind of more of a grotesque kind of feeling. So that's a good thing. I want that. I'm going to close InDesign here. Okay, that's probably all the memory hogging programs right there. So I'm going to copy and paste this into the G, and then I'm going to try and space both of them at the same time. So for the G, I have a few options, right? So here I'm just using the knife tool again. I'm adding 2 points, and then I'm just dragging this across. So you can quickly open this corner. I can start adjusting these shapes independently. And this way of drawing with open corners is really, really useful. It really helps me to kind of be able to fiddle around with the design without worrying that I'm going to muck up the curves as well. So that's kind of really useful. I can also, using the center background tool, send Command J, and that will give me this copy in the background. And then what I can do is kind of make a bit a G with the spur. I can close open paths and get a bit of a G with the spur. I can open this corner and continue to adjust this curve so that I can get a larger sort of spur. And maybe I don't want that to go all the way down. So you have, pressing Command B to go into the background, I have options now for AG. So Okay, I think I would like it to be a little bit more pronounced as a sort of detail. And this kind of helps me to get there. Oops. To kind of adjust the curve, I'm holding down the Option tool and just kind of making that like so. So, interesting detail, may or may not keep it. What I will do is keep this now, and I'm going to duplicate this glyph, and I can do that by pressing Command D. All right, so I get a duplicate now, and you can see when I have a duplicate, it goes G.001. So if you want to be very funny, you can 007 your G. But what I want to do actually is put SS01. And what this is it tells Glyphs that this is going to be a part of a stylistic set. So we'll talk about stylistic sets in just a moment, but I'm going to space these guys first. So I'm going to do OOCO, OOGO, and you can call for any letter in Glyphs by pressing Command F. You get a little bar like this. You can go G dot, and you'll see your stylistic set of your G right there. So here you have OOC, OOG, OOG, and then you're going to put 2 more control characters. So now, obviously, all of these are going to be equals O, right? Because on the left side, they are essentially an O, right? And on the right side, we are going to obviously now need to make some adjustments. So 30 kind of, you're looking up here, let's see this like so, right? If I look at it with 30 units here and 30 units here, I have a nice big gaping hole here with these terminals. So I need to kind of narrow that space a little bit. So I'm going to go for 20. That helped, right? Another thing that does help, if you're able to, if this is part of your design, is that you can close the C up a little bit more, right? You can do this because your C obviously doesn't have a little bar in the middle, right? You can't do this for a G, or you can't do very much for a G. You can close up a C a little bit more as well, right? If you feel like this is still too thick, you prefer something like this, it's probably a bit too harsh, you can even bring this in even more as well. So I will not do that. I will keep it as it is. And I might just go for 15 units to be very, very sort of, keeping in this tight, not touching sort of feeling, right? On the G here, on the left is an O. I'm going to try my luck with 25. I think that's quite nice. Maybe it does seem a little sort of tight there, so I'm just going to go back to 30. That does help quite a bit. And here, maybe we can do the 25 because it's more of a circle. So maybe not. So this is where sometimes, like you're looking at it and adjusting, you come up with like a kind of a little bit of a strange number. This is the kind of thing that you're going to want to test in a proofing sheet. So now that I have a stylistic set listed here, you can see I've got a G here, but I've also got another G here highlighted in pink, which is a G for stylistic sets. And it's really, really interesting and useful to have a stylistic set. I mean, graphic designers love stylistic sets. I personally, in my previous life as a graphic designer, loved using stylistic sets. So something that you can definitely do. And it's pretty easy to make one. I wouldn't say it's always pretty straightforward to kern these, but in your font info panel, right, under features, you get this amazing thing here where Glyphs can kind of compile certain features for you. So you can update and compile, and it will kind of essentially write pretty basic open type feature code for you. If you want something more advanced, you have to kind of write it yourself. But for simple things like this, you get a kind of a default, right, stylistic set number 1, and you get 20 stylistic sets in open type code. So this is number 1. It's sub regular G by G.sso1, and you can put it as spurless G. Okay, so this is updated. And if I go, let's say to here, and I go, okay, Git, for instance, and under features, you can test whether it works by basically pressing stylistic set 01, and it will swap over to this spurless G. So turn it off, you get your regular G. Ta-da! Magic. Type design magic. So let's take a quick look at designing some other pretty straightforward letters. One of my favorites is a U, because it actually doesn't take a lot for you to design this. You start with H, and you can kind of align all pieces to the bottom. Ta-da! Like so. And then what I like to do is just merge everything, right? Because it's easy. And you want to kind of take the knife tool and holding down Option, kind of get these to be somewhere in the middle. And then you're going to bring these up, right? Like so. So somewhere around here is good. And then, as I said before, the best way to draw curves in Glyphs is not to draw them at all. Basically get Glyphs to do all the hard work for you. So you just do Option click, and Glyphs will draw these beautiful, beautiful curves for you. So I'm just going to push that big curve into the overshoot. Here I'm pushing this down a little bit because I want more of a, like I'm looking at my O, for instance, right? I like how this looks. I technically also could have started with the O, I realized, and sliced off the top. That would have given me a pretty decent U as well. Although the curvature probably not quite the same. So here we're going to kind of go with, you can see how the curve of this U and the O are going to be slightly different, I believe. So here you could potentially sort of sub that in. You can see, okay, wow, that is quite a difference in terms of how low this is. The position of this is down a bit. Position of is 258 on the x-axis and 121 on the y-axis. So this is 155, and I want to bring it down to 121. So now if I were to draw a guide, add guide, so you get a guide. You can see here, this is a local guide, which means that it only shows up in the letter U, right? If I want it to be global, I need to kind of right click this little blue dot and make global guide. And now it's red and it will now appear every single letter. But yes, I want to kind of keep this as my U. It's a little bit stronger than the H. So here I'm going to maybe minimize this, get a bit of contrast as well. So let's put this to the test. Okay, so it does need to be as good as the H on this end. Maybe on this side it doesn't need to be, but it will. Okay, so slightly narrower on the right side because our eyes perceive, even though in a typeface that has presumably no contrast, you would still have some, be 1 or 2 units of difference. So here I think our O and our U line up really, really nicely. And here, because it's like a narrow, straight-sided serif, you could technically use the value of the H. I'm going to go for something slightly narrower than that, just to kind of mitigate these curved segments below. So left and right still stay the same, but the spacing is slightly narrower than the H. And optically, it looks very, very close, right, to what's happening between two H's. And that's key. So now I can type in Git. Oh, I can't GitHub. Shucks. Oh, well. Yeah, let's move on to our lowercase letters. So here I've drawn a bunch. I think this is too intense and too high. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. What I can also do, sometimes what I do here is to look at the speed pump data. And here, sometimes I will just make sure that my apex sort of nodes are exactly where they need to be. And I usually run green harmony for that, right? Just really quickly, just to get a nice sort of smooth curve. So on the end, I can also do that. And I can see here, this is not ideal. That will fix it-ish, kind of. Actually, I prefer it to be like this. So I'm going to move my handles to get to the point where I feel like it's kind of nice. This seems to be okay. Not much change there. So now I'm going to do a H. Oops. And I'm going to extend this up to our ascender. Very nice. This is going to be my L. Okay. And I'm also going to do an M, which we've pretty easily done here as well. So I'm going to add 200 units. 200 units there to help me. Copy and paste. 71 units. There we go. We've got an M. This will be equals N and equals N. So you don't have to worry about this spacing, right? For a like kind of a really upright sans serif design, your U is your N upside down. This more or less kind of works pretty straightforwardly, so I wouldn't touch that at all. I'm going to talk quickly about the letter A. Now, if I go into, I think it was here, I had a sketch for letter A, and I'm going to unlock the image. I'm going to bring this image to the letter A. Whoa, there we go. Wow, okay, this image is a bit large, eh? I'm going to bring that down here like so. Okay, so I'm going to lock the image. I'm going to have that in the background. I'm going to start with the letter N. I hope you can see because it's a bit kind of messy here. And when you decompose this, you essentially don't really want this right half of the N, left half of the N. You can kind of move it to help you kind of go there. What you want to do is to kind of, I'm holding down Control and Option and kind of doing this thing where it is sort of like a nudge, right? It's very useful to have this tool. It kind of helps me to get like kind of quick curves a bit easily. And you'll see that the curves of the N and the A aren't quite the same. So here I'm also going to kind of replicate the same angled feature. I've just basically added another point and pulled this down. Whoops, like so. And then here I can kind of maybe do this, right? This will help me get the feature that I want. So I'm essentially doing, oops, same sort of option click process, really. It's just that you're working from a square. So you get something like this. And then A is very, very interesting as a letter, right? You have most letters, I guess, like in N, for instance, you have one big component, let's say this area, and then you have another component, which is this arch, right? And A has multiple things going on for you that all create like various levels of personality, like this arch on the top that has one level of personality. Does it have a tail? Is it angled like this? This also creates a different level of personality. How high does the bowl go? What is the angle of that bowl? I mean, there's just countless, I guess, variations of how you can kind of really design this letter. It is definitely one of my favorite letters to design, for sure. So I'm just going to do some very, very basic sort of things here. Just kind of make a rough sort of sketch, right? And I think this is the thing with a lot of type design. You are sketching things pretty roughly. So if you like what you see, I mean, I do this pretty much every week now for the students at Type Design Asia, where we're going through talking about how to design letters. And if you want to find out more about Type Design Asia, obviously typedesign.asia is where it's at, where we teach type design. So here I'm going to use the fit curve panel, ta-da, to give me a good kind of approximate thing there. I'm not sure about this angled terminal, so I'm going to stick with this. And notice how the end kind of joins very smoothly like that. I'm going to get rid of the sketch now because I think it served its purpose. And I'm going to bring in the U, right? Because I want to see how this is kind of joining here, right? So I want to actually take this particular portion, paste it in here, flip it around, and I want to kind of map that into this, right? So I'm going to send this thing to the background. I'm going to delete this. I want to put that right here. Oops, I can't do that. That's not right. That's not the right idea. I'm going to push this to this particular point. So this is kind of me mimicking what happens on the upside down of an N, right? Except that I need to make this a lot smaller. So in order to kind of join them up like so, I'm just going to shrink it down. Like so. Okay, that's nice. Don't really need this. These can join up here. And I'm going to see that my left side, sorry, yeah, the left side of the N is not as thick as the right side. Here, maybe I'm going to add a little bit of a point. Going to help me get a straight sort of node. And here as well, I think I would like a much more sort of considered curve. So we've got an A now. I'm not still 100% sure about what's happening over here. Maybe it needs the same type of treatment. That does help a lot. So you can see now I've got like a very nice A, kind of similar to what I had previously. And here is where you can kind of go and look at SpeedPunk and kind of observe and say, hey, is this, like exactly where it needs to be? Do I like it like so, or do I like what the machine or the algorithm is giving me? So kind of being able to quickly make an A here. I think what's interesting to see is that when you take it to a bunch of lowercase n's, because of the steepness of this curve and the gentleness of this one, the A actually needs more guts in the overshoot. So it needs to go a bit higher in order to sort of, kind of appear to be at the same level as the N. So that's just something that you will start to hopefully see as you're going on. So we can also make this a little bit longer. And maybe to help us stiffen this up, I'll add another point here as well. So you can see here we've got. So now 1, 2, 3. I can try for a bit more of a more constructed type of curve. And I think that comes really along quite well. So to space this, I'm going to use the same value as the N because that's here. I am going to try to do what was in the sketch and do this a little bit to help and see if that will make a nice, quite interesting. Again, here's where you could do a stylistic set and say, you know what, I don't want that. I want it to be like this, right? You can also do a bit of an optical correction where you make this particular section of the stem a little bit smaller or just sort of like this. So you have two options, a more kind of fancy option and maybe a one that's a little bit more sort of considered like so. Right, so this again, instead of maybe ASSO1, you can make it ASSO2, right? So that you can turn two different features on, like not at the same time. Right, to space this, we're going to again use the spacing sort of help here. I'm going to make sure that this is closer to 60 units. So same here, I will basically equals A, right? That will, whoops, that will give me a little bit more better of a regularity that I want to get in there. So maybe here I'm just going to reduce this by 2 units, and a.sso2, I'm going to update that as well. So now if I go to features, I can update and I see there's a new stylistic set here that is alternate A, right? So if, for instance, I can Gahao, okay? So I can essentially now turn on stylistic set A. Oh, there we go. And also turn on stylistic set 1 or turn 1 off, right? So you get options. And this is a great way to kind of test, like aspects of your typeface as well, right? One of the last things maybe we will go through is how to draw an S, which is, I will end on this. I think most people are always very curious, how the blazes do you actually draw an S? It's such a difficult letter, it is. So we're going to start here with an S, the lowercase s. And what you want to do is you want to just freeform it, really. So, you imagine you have something like this, kind of quite basic, right? And of course, you are going to put in all of your nodes here, right? So you're going to do this, going to double click, have lots of fun double clicking. Okay, like so. I'm going to kind of try to keep this as consistent as possible with the rest. It's going to be a test. So you'll get a shape that kind of looks like this. This is terrible, obviously, but that's fine. Because I'm working on a more condensed and narrow sort of space, what I'm going to do is bring the O in as a guide, right, for me. So ideally, my S should not be terribly much wider than my O. So I'm just going to shift that now in here, shift these points across, bring these guys in, right? And you can see the S is looking really spectacular. So I'm going to try and help myself a little bit by just pressing green harmony, and that does help a little bit. Now, the main thing that you are going to try and fix first, okay? Main thing that you're going to try and fix first, okay, is this spine portion. Now, this spine, which is this section, like so, you are going to try and adjust this, right, so that it is as good as it can possibly be. Now, the goal of this, I find, is to kind of get it to a stage where it's comparable with an L, right? So it should feel like you've got an L, and if you rotated this L, oops, copy, paste. If I rotated this L like so, right, the spine should kind of maintain the rough integrity that the L has. So in order to do that, I'm going to obviously kind of really play around with these curves to get me a decent, I think it's like good for the L now. I need to kind of really basically start adjusting this section here. So I want to look at this. This has sort of 137 units of space. This needs a few more. So this is not good enough. I'm going to have to bring this down a little bit. That means that this guy will need to bump up a little bit, like so. Okay, and I mean, if you're a beginning designer and you're struggling with your S, don't worry. It's kind of inevitable, right? I think I have a funny story. A friend of mine was studying type design, and he spent maybe a whole Saturday working on his S. He was so frustrated. So here's where I've got my O, right? I'm going to bring it back into the background. I'm going to try and see if I can copy the same styling that the O has. So here and here and here, this is a flat bottom. I'm going to do that here. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to stick this in here. So I'm going to, so now I've got like, the same sort of shape. And for this, I'm going to now copy and paste this. And I'm going to use the X axis, right, to kind of help me. So I want to have a similar shape top and bottom, right? And you might see, like, but you drew that part already. Why are you throwing it away? Well, the answer is it was good enough for what I needed it to do then. And now that I've kind of copied and pasted a bunch of stuff from the O, I actually get a much better sort of overall shape. Now, I don't have a C to compare this with, but I do have an A. And so here I'm going to stick in my A. I'm going to bring that here, and I want to kind of see, okay, I don't have it flat on the top of the A, but this these shapes, or even the O actually, right? The O, the shape, the counter shape in the O is a lot narrower. So what I can do here is to bring this in a little bit more, like so. I'm holding down Option here, and I'm going to add in a bunch of straight points so that I can have a more constructed type of S. There we go. Like so. So here I'm going to line these guys up. It'll just help me in this kind of very constructed type of S shape. That's beautiful coming now across. I'm very happy with that. Now I want to copy and paste it to the bottom, right? So there we go again. Here I can kind of position that a little bit, can delete what's happening here, and I'm going to try to link this up now. So here I will just pull this. I'm using the nudge tool. Let's Control and Option again to make this happen. You can see the S is a bit sort of off. One of the key things that's important to remember is that your S does need to be kind of a trapezium. So it's not a rectangle per se, it's more like this is the overall shape. The bottom is larger than the top, right? So if I were to flip this around, 1, 2, you will see that the bottom is larger than the top. Now, this is not 100% correct, this spine here. So I do need to kind of make some adjustments to make sure that they're a little bit more sort of parallel. And maybe to help me, I will basically kind of create more sort of straight points, like so. This allows me then to kind of beef up, right? So you can see that our N has a bit more of a constructed kind of character. I want to have a similar kind of type of feeling. So I'm going to do this as well. This is not necessary for every S, but in this particular design, I think this is going to help me a lot. Now, I'm intentionally not putting in 2 sort of points here, even though I believe it'd be very, very, very helpful to construct the S this way, like so. You can, if you feel like this approach is helpful for you, right? It helps to kind of give a certain sort of rigidity. Maybe now you can kind of lose these points. So there's no fixed way to kind of go, hey, how do I make this S? The answer is slowly, right? Because that's what S stands for. It stands for slowly. You're going to do it bit by bit. You're going to try your best to kind of get to a result you are happy with, right? So maybe you come to now this sort of stage where it's like, okay, you can get these to work a little bit better for you or work a bit harder for you. Okay, so now next to my A, oops, right? You can see how the S and the A work together. I'm not convinced about this angled things on the S, but if you're very happy with this, then I can suggest you remove these points because they don't actually help to create an S that will interpolate well. Like interpolate is where you use mats to kind of adjust or get multiple weights in the typeface. And I think sometimes it can be very, very detrimental to kind of have so many points. It just doesn't help you. So 143, 164, 155. Oops, 1, 2. I think we can afford to bump this up just a little bit more. And I've got a possible S right now, not the best S I've ever made, but something that is good enough for the purposes, hopefully, of this demo. So one other thing I might do is just pull this guy a little bit higher. There we go. That means that I also probably have to reduce the thickness of this S. It's just massive right now, but ooh, that is coming together now a fair bit better already. So you can see now I've got an S. I can put it next to an O. Probably does need a little less space on the left. There you go. So ladies and gentlemen, S, that was a good, 20 minutes worth of effort. Better than a whole Saturday, I'll agree. So again, you can now, I've demoed some of these letters already. I think, you can see that there are very clear relationships, for instance, with like other letters. Sometimes you will see like, okay, I've got a J right here. I can make stuff happen quite quickly. So that's easy J, easy wins right there. D's and O's, O and a C and a G also very quite quick and easy wins. So if you like these videos, please continue to subscribe to Type Design Asia. We're really working on a bunch of free to air content. If you prefer to join us for like an actual course. We teach type design at Type Design Asia. We have 3 models. Let me just quickly go to them right here. So you can read my little video, listen to my little video, and kind of try to detail out a lot of what we actually. One of the reasons why we want to do Type Design Asia, right? So there's a little bit of my story as well in this page. I talked about how I ended up, going overseas not once but twice to study type design, and I realized that's an incredible privilege, right? Not everybody has the same level or ability to do that. I think it's it's worth. Sorry, I realized I wasn't sharing. That's terrible. Wasn't sharing my screen. So let me just do that again. So you're seeing my screen now. Whoa, beautiful. So yes, you can go, if you want to find out more about what I do and why I want to teach type design and why I believe it's worth teaching and learning type design, you can go to typedesign.asia. Here I've got a little video for you to watch, introducing why it's part-time. And some of the struggles that I had, right, making fonts. I wanted to learn how to make typefaces. I didn't have any opportunities to. I really dug around, and I ended up going overseas not once but twice, right? But I realized that not everybody can do that. Some people just don't know. And you try to watch maybe some videos online here and there, but it's not the key thing that is a big differentiator. The key thing that is a big differentiator, I think, to make type design like viable for beginners is that you actually have a mentor, right? So someone who is, helpful to you, who can kind of answer questions, show you certain things that you otherwise wouldn't know about. You can watch the course, but having access to someone who can actually answer some of those questions is really, really useful. And for me, that was two people, Jean-Francois Porcher and Evan Sorkin. And I feel like it's important to have that. So the key thing about Type Design Asia is that the idea of building a community basically gives you access to people like me and other kind of like-minded type designers who want to build and share their knowledge, right? You can read more about what we go through in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the program. But the main thing is that there's a community model where basically you watch the videos, you're doing it at your own time and pace, but you get help along the way. So you can ask any questions you want in the community forum. People will answer, I will answer, other people might answer. We're going to do community calls, and those are really, really useful because we'll go through certain things, like that all type designers go through certain common mistakes that we all make. There'll be like regular critiques by other designers. There's a group coaching model where you work with me, or rather I work with you and a group of people to kind of essentially go through a 9-week program with 2 weeks break. And we kind of really push you intentionally to create a text face, a text font at the end of that, right? The mentored version is I working with you one-on-one, right? You're basically doing the same thing, but you get even more access with me. I get, like basically a WhatsApp chat. I'll answer your questions all the time, to kind of really help you accelerate your learning. So, these are certain things that I wish I had. I went overseas and I came back and I was like, I've got nobody to talk to. I don't have anybody to ask questions to. I was emailing, like type designers that I knew left, right, and center, and bless their souls, these people were so busy. Some of them did reply, but they just petered off, right? So I feel like having an intentional sort of community where you can actually, not be afraid to ask questions, really get the help that you need and move on in your type design journey is essential, right? So I'll leave that to you. Really encourage you to kind of consider that. And of course, I'd love to be your teacher and mentor as well. So if that's something that speaks to you, I would love to kind of continue that conversation. And you can basically ping me on Instagram. I'm Mark DeWin. Instagram.com/Mark DeWin or Type Design Asia. And you're more than I'm more than happy for you to kind of ask me questions, schedule a call with me. More than happy to kind of help anybody with that as well. If this is the right thing for you, I'd love to be in your journey as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Take care.